I'm going to record. So today is the January 15th, 2024 session of the Folksong Working Group. And we are delighted to be joined by Larisa Pechersky, and will give us her take on the Yiddish song. It occurs to me, I met you just about 30 years ago, I think, in St. Petersburg. So it's been a while, and glad to be in touch and to hear what you have to say. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your introduction. And I'm so honored and I'm so thankful that I can be here today with you on this Zoom meeting. And I'm going to talk to you about what Mark probably saw 30 years ago in St. Petersburg, Russia, and what I've been doing with my students when I teach Yiddish songs. And I come from the perspective of an educator and from a perspective of someone who learned my Yiddish songs from my grandmother. So what we call it in Russian, I am a carrier of folklore or practitioner of folklore. And what I'm trying to do with my students, both children and adults, is to do what my grandmother did to me. And I think with your permission, I want to talk a little bit about my background so there is no misconceptions or assumptions about who I am and what I do. And if I may, I will share my screen. Is it all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Be sure to share sound too.
Okay, just give me a moment. I haven't been on Zoom since my remote learning and remote teaching. So I'm a little bit rusty with that, and I hope that now you will see my entire screen. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Thank you so much. So, okay, and let me
well, Meshka says that he's in Boston and he said he was going to miss this meeting. So, or I meant to say I was missing the meeting. So
tell him that I'll miss him very much because he and I also go 30 years back, and I hope to hear his input and feedback as well. Let me try. Okay. All right. I'll probably put it here.
He's going to see what he can do.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I would like to call today's talk Pshat, Remez, Drach, and Sod in Yiddish songs. Can you see my screen? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes. Good. Thank you. So once again, just for those who might see this video later on, my name is Larisa Pechersky. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia. Now I live in Queens, in New York City, for the past 25 years that we celebrated this year. And I dedicate all my work and all my talks and all my contributions to Jewish education to my grandmother, Milia Shagalova. And if you want to learn more about her, it was published by Josh on his website a while ago. And when I was growing up, she raised me with my mother, and she always sang Yiddish songs to me. And she did it in a very Jewish way. She would always stop at some points and go on long detours about her life in a shtetl, about tradition, about everything that would come to her mind in association with the text of that song. And this is what I try to do with my students. So my education, I'm not a musicologist, I'm not a musician. I have very good general and Jewish education, which includes St. Petersburg Pedagogical University, and then Tura College and Queens College here in the United States. And my formal Jewish education is from St. Petersburg Jewish University, the Center for Jewish Art at Hebrew University, and Teacher College at the Yeshiva in Israel, and CUNY Graduate Center. My Yiddish education is from Columbia University, Sorbonne, and Vilnius University. And my best Jewish education, I would say, is from all our Yiddish programs, class camp, where I went for 16 years, and they still miss it, Class Canada, and all other types of both Yiddish and Jewish programs, and many conferences where I had the chance to present something similar to what you're hearing today. And among my mentors are Dr. Morke Schechter, with whom I studied in intermediate and advanced classes, with Itzhak Niborski in advanced classes, and Dr. Dov Noy, which is my mentor in folklore. And I'm very privileged and humbled by the fact that I was a mentor to Dr. Evgenia Khazdan, who is a professional ethnomusicologist who deals with Jewish music now, and Rabbi Motel Gardon. I don't know if, I think some of you are familiar with him, but yeah, I counted on Meishke to be most familiar. You probably all know that he was my student since he was a very young child. And I happened to collaborate and to share a screen, not only a screen, but a stage that I'm also very fortunate to and humbled by all those wonderful people whose names you see on the screen. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity. We work together both as teachers of traditional singing style and Yiddish folklore, and we performed together. Most of my work that I was able to use for this approach that I'm presenting today was done at the Family Center Adain Law that my friends and I established in St. Petersburg. We opened on March 1st, 1992, in the very beginning of Perestroika. And it was an absolutely wonderful school that still functions till now. And we taught everything Jewish through music, art, theater, and literature. And so every subject was called art, music, and so on. But during each class, we taught everything we knew about Judaism and ethnography and Jewish culture and Jewish context. So my class was Jewish music. And I worked with absolutely amazing genius accompanist, Marina Zvягina, who was just like me, a carrier or practitioner of folklore. She knew her songs from her father. And she was able to play the piano with me in a way that she was always able to fit her audience or our students. She would change keys, she would make arrangements right away. It was just amazing. So I want to mention her because we worked in a tandem. It was really, really good. At the same time, Professor Zemtsovsky approached me to help him with the Jewish part of the anthology of Yiddish folk songs that was published in 1994 in St. Petersburg State Publishing House Compositor. And as far as I understand, it was the first academic edition of Yiddish song in St. Petersburg since the revolution. And at that time, believe it or not, I did not have any formal Yiddish education. Jewish education, but not particularly Yiddish. It's a very interesting and long story how this book was published. And again, I was privileged and thankful that I was a part of its publication. Some articles that I published about my work were published in the journal Jewish School. I was able to find on the internet only the 3 inaugural first issues of them. I have an article in one of them, but the one that I will be presenting today, just to make sure that I mention it, what you will hear today, some of it was already published in Russian in 1994 in that magazine. When we teach students, especially here in the United States, when I started teaching English literature and English language arts, and when we teach reading comprehension, we tell students to make connections with the text. And we tell them there are 3 types of connections: text to self, text to world, and text to another text. So this is very close to what I was doing with my students when I worked in the Jewish education system. And for half of my career, I always worked in Jewish education, both in the United States and in Russia. And for the past 17 years, I moved to the New York City public school system, where I also implement some parts of Yiddish curriculum, Yiddish song, and Jewish traditions because I work at a School of International Studies where we teach children about many different cultures. So I do my part to bring my identity and my knowledge of Jewish culture to diverse students in New York City. So when we analyze Jewish texts, I'm sure that most of you know that there are 4 levels of Jewish text analysis called paradise. It's pshat, which is simple, obvious, literal meaning, remez, hint, drash, commentary, and sod, secret and mystery. So in a more simplistic way, simpler than we apply to the Jewish scripture, to Tanakh, I apply the same approach and those 4 levels to any Jewish text I read, including Yiddish songs. Any questions so far? Mark told me that I need to stop for some interaction. Can I continue? Because I plan to engage you as if you were my audience when I teach Yiddish songs.
Right, go right on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my assumption that in every Yiddish text of a song, every word there is for a reason. They're not random. And if I hear or I see a word, I always ask why. So let's see how it works. Today, I want to give you an example of one song that we all know. It's Rezele by Mordechai Gibirtik. Please tell me if you want me to play one of the renditions of this song, or should we go straight to the text analysis?
I think we probably know Vesela.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Thank you. So I hope you remember the text very well. And here I chose 3 YouTube pieces that I found from a male performer, female performer, and a wonderful animation film by husband and wife performers. I'm sure you know all of them. And here is the text in transliteration and the translation that I'm sure all of us know. So let's take a look at the simple meaning of this song. What's the pshat? Look at the questions on your screen. What do you think the pshat is here? Do you want to take turns and say something, or you want me to just play both the teacher and the student?
Well, it's more than one.
Of the questions in a row. Just what's the pshat?
Pshat is a love story.
Okay. Any think about the plot? Let me tell you what my students usually tell me. After we read the story, we read slowly, we read carefully, we pay attention to details. So they say, well, it's a story of a young girl and a young boy of, you know, of certain age that are in love with each other. And he goes around your house, she comes downstairs, she scolds him on behalf of her mother that she's unhappy with him for a certain reason. And he promises to change his life, and she believes him, she gives him a gift, he is now happy, she leaves and goes home, and he's still circling around the house, hopeful that she will visit him again in his dream. Is this so? Did I miss anything from the simple meaning? Okay, see, Josh says no. So how do we classify the story? Is it a love story? And how do we know? Is it a didactic story that teaches us something? Is it a family story? And you told me it's a love story. So question back to you. How does the song text emphasize their love? And now I would like to hear from you. Give me a few points. How does the text tell us that they're indeed in love with each other, if you believe it's a love story?
I would say that the two the two heroes of the story are bending their behavior to the requirements of the parents in order to get together. So she scolds him because she knows that's what her mother wants her to do, and then and then she makes him a Filmzettel, I think. Yeah. Again, they're trying to conform to the religious um, structures that they believe will allow them to get together.
Beautiful. In your opinion, it's their manifestation of love if they're ready to do that for their beloved, right?
Right.
Okay,
They're
very good.
ready. Yeah, they're ready to sacrifice.
Well, there are other indications they embrace and he kisses her, whatever,
Yeah.
Right, they show affection to each other. Very good. So there are many examples that you go through the plot and through the actions of the characters to show how they show their love. How does the text show us that they are really in love? This is where my students and I engage in Yiddish morphology. We look at the suffixes, all 3 degrees of those multiple words of endearment and affection and diminutive suffixes. It's Gessel and Gessele and Heisel and Heisele and Reisel and Reisele. And we talk about this part of the text not to be overlooked. Remember, most of my students and most of my audiences have very little Jewish knowledge, or they're beginners, or they're not so much into Jewish customs or Jewish traditions or Jewish languages. So this is something that we also take into consideration in addition to the narrative that you spoke about. So that's also pshat, because it's in the simple words and their morphological structure. What do you think happens when the story ends? Does she really come to him in a dream? What happens after? This is a good question based on what the narrative of pshat tells us. Any guesses? I see some hesitation. Let's see what happens next. Should I continue or any questions?
Go on.
Yeah.
So that was pshat. Now, what are some hints that we have in the text that are not very obvious from our word to word understanding or translation? So look at those questions on your screen. The song starts, steht sich dort in Gessele. And this is where my students and I start talking about Jewish town, Jewish architecture, Jewish house, Jewish infrastructure. And in my Jewish university, we had a subject called, I don't know how to translate this word well, maybe Mark will help me, Gradovедение, Jewish, I would say, urban studies, where we all about that, which enabled us in the early 90s when we go to a folklore expedition in Ukraine and we see those houses, that we will be able to identify, oh, there was a Jewish Krom, this was a Jewish school. So this type of things that I bring up and I teach my students just because the song starts with the description of the street and the town. My goal when I teach Yiddish songs is to bring them Jewish knowledge and to teach them to like these songs, to love them, to be comfortable with them, to be fluent in them, and to live with them, not to perform them, but to sing them in the shower, to sing them around their family table, to sing it to their younger siblings and babies. That's my goal. And this is why I go into the details of what behind every line of each song. So as a Yiddish song teacher, this is my reason for teaching. So they have traditional singing style, they know traditional melodies, and they know tradition around the Jewish context. So where does the story take place? Are there any hints in the text that tell us the location?
Larissa,
Yes.
can I maybe jump a little bit in your presentation because I'm struck by what you just said that your goal with your students is. Um, and first of all, I applaud it because I think that it's something that I share with you. The desire to have these songs, which is the subject of our whole study circle, scholarly circle, um, live rather than only be performed. I think that's kind of central to what we're about. So I wanted to just maybe jump ahead a bit, but explore that with you, make sure that we don't leave that out. Um, so it feels to me like that aim is pursued when you come to ask people how to relate the text to themselves. Um, so if you don't mind my jumping, or we can just leave that as a marker and get to it when it comes up in your presentation. But I just wanted to make you know a marker that's the part that interests me the most.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'm glad we share it with you. It was my experience when I started working on this, and I was very conscious of the fact that I'm a teacher, but I'm not a music teacher. And I got to work with musicians. And when I worked, especially with very young children, I started teaching this at the age of 2. And there is like a whole curriculum I developed in Jewish song, both Hebrew and Yiddish, for different ages and for different years of study. And many colleagues of mine who are music educators would tell me, you cannot teach this song to this age students, they cannot do this arpeggio. And I said, I don't know what you mean. Look at my students. They sing it with so much love and enthusiasm. So to be honest, at this point, I don't care if they can sing Klingen Glockel. It was one song that they didn't want me to teach. They said it's too difficult for young children to sing. And to me, it was not an obstacle because I didn't know it's too difficult for children to sing. So yes, and if I can quote Mitya Gardon, Motel, who at age 8 came to me and said, I was singing these songs to my new baby brother to rock him to sleep. And when I fell asleep myself, I dreamt that nigun that you're teaching me right now. And I got shivers because I was introducing a new nigun, and this child gets up and said, I just dreamt it yesterday night, which told me that milieu of Yiddish traditional music is so much ingrained in him that it seems to him now that the new song I'm teaching him was the one that he dreamt the previous night. And I think this is what my goal is. Okay, so we will talk a little bit more about it probably closer to the sod of this song. And guys, I want to ask you in terms of our time and presentation, do you want me to go back and forth with you trying to get your participation, or do you want me to just go and tell the answers to all those things myself, just for the time's sake?
I'm not sure we need to go through them all, separately. It would take probably a really long time. I mean, we get the idea, which is very good, that you're looking into the sociocultural background without being academic or technical about it, but by simply going out from the song text into the world, into the world that the song was living in. And you're making suggestions, about that world. Maybe the name is symbolic, and so forth. That's all very interesting for us because we've been saying for a long time that we just never get enough contextual information about the Yiddish song, and so you're trying to build that up by doing it as a communal project, which is a very interesting method for doing that.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on that and say that I think your approach is, from my point of view, this is my own belief. I don't know that all of us share this, but um, I I think you've identified, and especially with the little anecdote you told us about Uncle Gordon, um, something very important about the transmission of songs and the way that they, as you put it, live rather than being performed in the community, which is essential to the even to the musical evolution of the songs that we're talking about. Um, and I wonder if you could tell us a bit more of maybe anecdotally or summing up how, for example, the people that the young people that you've taught this song, for example, to, how they relate to it. Because for many of us, growing up in a different time when we're different family backgrounds, where if we were, let's say, dating someone, what kinds of parental objections came up, and you know how we relate to this song. So I'm just very curious about that.
Thank you. Okay, let me then go back a little bit if you're asking how this song is introduced to children. Usually I taught this song maybe in their third year of study with me. The school where I was, most of the children will come to the Sunday school where they spend many hours from 10 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was a family school. Their parents had classes at the same time. Sometimes they were together and sometimes they were separate from the children. And in the beginning of my presentation, I put links there that I can share with you. There is an absolutely wonderful film that was done in 1995 about that school. It's 18 minutes and I just love it. It's my only home video where I can see my baby because, you know, I don't have home videos. And you can see there are many answers to your question in that film, but I can tell you that this is a very massive text. So I cannot teach it to young children who cannot manage this text in a foreign language for them, right? So my students, like what was their preparation or background? Their first year with me, I taught them a whole course on tradition. Okay, I would say it this way. Jewish songs with a traditional melody and a traditional text from Chazal, Tanakh, and Siddur. So we would spend the whole year learning different versions of the same text with different melodies. We taught all children to read and speak in their own pronunciation based on the place of origin of their ancestors. So nobody was laughing when they heard some visitors say Burich. And they really, what I call songs with 3 words. Songs like Am Israel Chai, David Melech Israel, Lecha Dodi, that was in Hebrew. Then the second year they learned Yiddish songs. We started a whole year of lullabies because they're repetitive and they have simple texts, and children's songs like Hobacha Porokson. And the third year was love songs and family songs. And this is where Rezela comes. Okay, so how did they relate to the story? I will tell you how I presented it first, and then you probably will be able to guess what different, I would say, takes or takeaways they had. Because to me, it's much more than just some story of lack of observance or desire for observance. Let's see what we have. I hope that answered your question a little bit, Josh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what kind of remes I help my students discover. So first of all, where does the story take place and how do we know? We look at the rhymes. We look at the rhymes and we figure out what dialects this song was meant to be performed. And my students were very well aware of the dialects because they could read Hebrew in different pronunciations, and we taught it to them. So when you see the rhyming scheme of the song, you can not pinpoint, but guess that it's the Southern, Krakow, Polish, Ukrainian, Yiddish pronunciation. So this is where the story probably takes place. At current Yiddish New York, I had a very interesting experience, an example of this situation. I was in the audience at a beautiful lecture on one of my favorite songs, In a Litvish der Weit. And the way the pronunciation was used in that lecture and in those performances, it's like a whole interesting story to me, how the context of this song in a Litvish der Weit and the pronunciation of the song was totally transformed by Polish performers who sang it in their own pronunciation, and wisely they changed the words. They always sang it in a Polish der Weit. And that was very significant and interesting to me. And, you know, we can talk a lot about that, but pronunciation tells you where the characters or the creator are from. How do we know the age of the characters? My students would guess this and that. And when I say students, it's both children and adults. I taught the same way to the adults. Again, they were mostly beginners. Or they will say, okay, the hint here is that they are above age of 13 because he needs a tefillin zekel. So when my students don't know what this means, I introduce it to them that this is how you know their age is older than 13 because he wears tefillin. And then we have a whole detour. This is where I teach about tefillin. Again, with my courses in Yiddish music, I teach them everything Jewish, not because it's in my curriculum, but because the song text help them raise these questions. It's like their interest, not because I want to teach them about bris or tefillin or chuppah and stuff like that. What is their relationship? You mentioned to me that you believe that they are in love, correct?
Mm.
And you all told me you know the text very well. Now, try to abstract yourself from everything that you know about the genre of this song. Imagine you see this text for the very first time and tell me, based on the text, how do you know that he is not her father? Go in your mind through the text. How do you know it's not an estranged or separated or divorced father who wants to see his child for some sort of a visitation? What is the counterpoint? What is the counter argument that is not the father? If you read through the text until one point, it could be exactly, forget what you know about it. They call each other Liebenker and Teire and this and that. And those words can be used between a parent and a child. Why is not a father?
Larisa, I think from the very first line we know that because the father would never refer to his own house as a Heisele.
But it's his former house. He's separated. He's divorced. He lives somewhere else. He comes to visit. You're talking about self-connection. Most of my students in Russia were from mother and grandmother families. Very few families had the father at home. Everybody was divorced or single mothers. Okay.
Yeah, but he would still call it Das Heisele. I mean, it would be. He just wouldn't say a Heisele.
Very good. I accept all
take.
answers. Many reasons, yeah. But what I would teach my students, did you know that in other cultures, some children may call their parents by the first name, but in the Jewish culture, it's not allowed. we don't call parents by their first name because we respect them so much. The commandment to respect them is on the same tablet as everything about God, and we don't call God by his own name, Shem Mefarash. And so we don't call parents by their first name ever. But here in the song, when she addresses him as Dovidel, this is where we know he's not the father. That's where I teach this thing that, no, you cannot call your mom and dad by their first names, according to our tradition. How do we know he's not her brother, who is an apprentice somewhere, or maybe studies at the yeshiva, doesn't live at home, and he comes to visit his sister? What in the song tells us that no, he's not your brother. It's because she gives him a tefillin zekel. And why is that? Because it's a custom among Jews that a bride makes a tefillin zekel for her future husband. And that's something that you usually don't do for your brother or other relative. And that's a hint that is not your brother. And we can safely assume that they are friends, they are neighbors, they are in love, and maybe they're dating, maybe they're seeing each other, but she already made him a tefillin zekel. And this is a hint that they are at the stage of their relationship that they're getting ready for their wedding, their chosen kala, just because she made the tefillin zekel for him. Why did she make a Magen Dovidel there? This is where I teach students that you decorate the tefillin zeklach with the symbols related to their names. And now we go talk about Ariel Leib and Tzvi Hirsch and David and what kind of embroidery would be appropriate for their tefillin zekel. And we go into it again. I teach one song a whole semester. Right? So we go into everything, and all my colleagues help. We do it interdisciplinary. So in other subjects, in arts, in literature, in theater, in Torah, and in Hebrew, they will learn everything related to the text we base it on. What is the significance of his name? From my students' background, the first thing they say, David Melech Israel, because this is what they taught them first year of their Jewish music study. Oh, they say David Melech Israel. So it must be, this is the symbol, is the symbol of the Jewish people, of Am Israel. Very good. We can talk about that. And how is it significant that she tells them that they can go to Kleisel and inform people that she made him this particular gift? That's a hint that she wants him to announce their engagement, to make it public. So these are all different hints that the text does not tell us explicitly, but we read in between the lines. Any questions so far? Can I go on?
Go on, go on.
Okay, so now we saw Pshat, we saw Remez. Now I'm going to give you a drash. Now, look at those questions. This is what I'm going to talk about as we look at the story that we just analyzed. So in the beginning of the song, it tells us she lives in a Boydemstable. Why? Remember I said that every word is there for a reason. So why is she living in the Boydemstable in the attic all the way up above and not on the ground floor or somewhere else? Why does she come downstairs and doesn't just speak with him out of the window? Remember how it says in the beginning of the song, as this call Sredrezele, as he's circling around the house, he is hearing that call, voice of his bride. And there's also her mother, who always stays inside. We don't see her coming outside of the house. She's still there. And then if you look at the text, what kind of words of endearment, affection, epithets they use towards each other? Remember when we spoke about Pshat, we spoke about all the suffixes that for English speakers is a challenge, but for Russian speakers, it's very easy because we have exactly the same thing in Russian. And what words they use other than those suffixes, what adjectives are there. And if you look at those adjectives that they exchange, which descriptive word stands out? Now, what Hebraisms are there? We already mentioned them. We spoke about the Magen Dovidel. It's a Hebraism. We spoke about your call, your voice. And there are two more. Do you guys recall which Hebraisms are there? This is why students will look deeply through the text. Anybody? Should I say it?
Right.
Yes.
There are two more, and they rhyme. It says, the droif gibicha shvuele.
Mhm.
Question. Why does it say that he gives her a shvuele? Why doesn't it say, I promise you, I certainly will? Why the word shvuele is there? And then it says, and addresses her, my tsnuele. Out of all words of endearment in this song, Tayere, Libinker, and so on, why does it call her tsnuele, which means humble or modest?
He's
This is
afraid of her
very-
mother.
Very interesting. So you think modest and humble children listen to their mothers more, right? Rather than
No,
arrogant and rebellious.
He's trying to convince her that her mother will accept him.
Very good. So he gives her a shvule and she is his snule. Now, what if I tell you that my whole drash means that this is not a love story about Dovidel and Rezele?
Mhm.
And this song, a whole song, is a big allegory and a story of the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai to the Jewish people. And this is a song about the festival of Shavuot. And that's my drash. So if you look back, so this girl Rezele lives somewhere up high and comes downstairs. And not immediately. First, she speaks from above, from the window, and then he hears your call, and which reminds me of a bus call, because it could have said shtime, but no, it said call. A bus call is God's voice that you can hear. Now, she is referring, the moment she comes downstairs, she's referring to her mother, who always stays in the house. And the moment she meets him, she doesn't say, hello, Dovidel, how are you, Dovidel? Good to see you, Dovidel. No, she goes right away, I need you to listen, that my mother says that you're acting in a non-Jewish way and you better do it differently in a Jewish way. So right away, she gives him some Torah in reference to her mother. And he says, I give you shvole. I will change everything. I will become frum. I will listen to your mother. I will act like your mother. And I even will tell people in the Kleisel, whatever this is. Right away, it says, we'll do, we'll listen, na'aseh v'nishma. He gives her the real oath, shvua. And this is why the text says, droif gibecha shvuele. You know how it sounds like Yontav Shavuos, right? Okay, now, in the second line, why do these two words rhyme? Shvule and snule. I'm trying to prove to you that whatever was on my mind when I read this text and taught to my students could be also probably on the mind of the creator of this song, not because he wanted to put it exactly like this, maybe yes or maybe no, but because psychological associations and allusions that pop up in our minds are based and influenced by our environment, by our tradition. So if this comes up in my mind, it probably came up to the writer's mind, and I'll tell you why. When you hear it snuele, which means humble or modest, You know how in our traditional literature, many characters have a common adjective. It's Mordechai Tzadik, Oman HaRosh, David HaMelech, Esther HaMalki the Grine. Which character in our tradition has this constant qualifier that it's a humble person? Who is that? It goes together with that person's name. Who? Okay. Usually my students also cannot answer. It's straight from the Torah, from weekly Parsha. It's Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is called Ish Tzanoa, Ish Anav. It was the most, I have a quote that I prepared the quote for you if you want, further proof. Yes, Moshe is referred as Ish Tzanoa, Ish Anav. And here, just because this word is used there out of the blue, it stands out. It's not living here, it's not tired, it's not anything else. Why Tznoa out of all her qualities? It tells me that probably once you say Shvuah, Tznoa comes to mind because it's a constant term for Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, you just told me they are preparing for the wedding. How is it significant for my drash? Of course, because Matan Torah was the wedding between the Jewish people and the Torah, and Har Sinai rose and was the chuppah above the Jewish people who circle around for how many days? 3 days. So they are preparing for the wedding, of course, because it's an allegory of David, Melech Israel, like my students told me, symbolism of his name, and her, the Torah, who came down from above and told them what to do and how to be Jewish, and now they're getting married. It's a wedding. So we know the symbolism of his name. What's the symbolism of her name? If it's David, Melech Israel, for their wedding, what about Rezele? This is something that I did not know until I learned it from Dr. Dov Noy. It was at our conferences for issues in Jewish education in early 90s when I was first presenting it. That little piece, he helped me to put in here. He told me that in the very old Yiddish text, the Torah is referred to as a rose, and most of the time, not just the word rose, but in diminutive, Rezele. Rezele is a common ancient Yiddish word for Torah. And here we go, right? So that is my drash. There are many more proofs in the text that it's an allegory of Matan Torah and Festival of Shavuos.
I have to ask, the line that always struck me was Geon Knakmir Nisalach, which I think, why would this be in this song? I never quite understood that. So
Okay.
how do you interpret that one?
Oh, it's for the same reason why Esther Amalka the Grine only ate seeds and nuts when she was married to Ahasuerus.
Ah,
They could not, or they didn't know how to keep kosher. You know that she only ate nuts. And we know that the Am Yisrael standing around Har Sinai, they only ate dairy, and this is why we eat dairy, and they ate fruits and nuts. And there's a little connection that I can make why Nisalech are mentioned there. Sometimes I speak with, you saw in my Remes part, there was a question. So we see in the song, we see the 2 youngsters, we see the mother, we mentioned some people in the Kleisel. Is there a father anywhere mentioned in this story?
nope.
Nope.
No. But if I said that every word there is for a reason, like you mentioned Nitzalach, how about the refrain? We have 2 refrains, Ein, zwei, drei, and kum, kum, kum. So when you look at Ein, zwei, drei, and again, I only base it on what my students know. And I told them, Eins, 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 wer weiß, was ist eins? Ein is der Kodesh Baruch Hu, So we probably see God's presence in the story. My American audience usually tells me, oh, look, this is the mother. It must be Shechina, the feminine aspect of God that dwells in the house. Of course, house, Bais, Beit HaMikdash, Beit HaBchira, you name it, right? It's a symbol. So yes, so Ein Seinates, we know it's Gott ist einer und weiter keiner. Then zwei seien die Liches, and she's coming downstairs like a Moshe with the Torah, with the tablets, and drei seien die Oves. So maybe this ends with dry gives you a little hint because it ends at 3 that there are some fathers, you know, Avinu Shebashamayim, and you know, maybe her father and his father that are not acting here, but maybe they're mentioned. Those ends with dry can give you some hint about what number 3 means for Jewish numbers and Jewish people. Again, it's like pulling it, but this is something that you can bring up.
Larisa, also the Rezele is also a shviusel, a paper cut. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much for telling me this. Isn't it amazing? Totally. Now, see, Itzhak just predicted my sword. Can we go into the sword part?
Right.
Okay, so look at the sword. Okay, we established this is an allegory of the Torah. Now, how many characters are in this story? And who are they? And this is easy for everybody to answer. So we have Rezele and Dovidel, and then we have the mother. Anybody else? I don't count people in the Heisel because they're very minor characters. But what I do count is 2 silent, constant characters who appear as witnesses to everything that happens, which are the house and the street. They're constantly mentioned. So to me, they're characters. So I have 5 major characters. And what I would like to do, and usually I do it with my students hands-on, we have some squares, we have some post-its, we have some materials, and we make a list of those characters in order of their appearance, like in a play. And we can make a list of only acting characters, which means characters who are subjects of a sentence, who have a verb, who actually act, who do something. For example, steht sich dort in Gessele, still vertraut das Heisele. Who is the character here? Heisele. Why? Because it steht sich. It does something, right? It steht sich. But Gessel is a character that is mentioned. So steht sich dort in Gessele, it's mentioned. You see it, you imagine it. You pause to look at it. So it's an object that's a mentioned character. So we can make 2 types of lists. Usually with my students, I make a list of only acting characters, those who have a verb, who act. So for example, when Rezele will be speaking about her mother, the acting character to list would be only Rezele because she's the one who speaks. But once the mother has a verb and does something, that she would be listed in that list of characters. The second list that I want to show you today is a list of all characters in order of utterance when they're mentioned. So these are 2 different types. The second list is longer, and we will look at it now. So this one you don't have to read. I'm just showing to you that this list of characters would be across the borders of stanzas. And you will see on the right, it's their initials, how they're listed. And you can see, like, for example, here, about the mother, about the Dovidel, that it goes from one verse to another, the character continues. It's still about him or her and so on. So to make it more digestible, so it doesn't look so scary like this, we will use visual tools. So for each character, I have a color-coded square, and this is what I do with my students, slowly and nicely in groups. We can do it by roles, we can do it together, you name it, in different venues. So I'm going to make this list. Usually I make it vertically, but here for the screen, I make it horizontally. And as we make the list, we read the text. You see this little green square? Steht sich dort in Gessele. Still vertraut das Heisele. Dort auf dem Bodenstäbel wohnt mein Reisele. Jeden Abend fahren Heisel dreh ich sich herum. Ich gebe a Pfeif und ruf es Reisel, komm, komm, komm. Öffnet sich ein Fenster, wacht aufs alte Heisele und bald klingt in stillen Gessel, als es kulsret Reisele. Noch eine Weile wart, mein Lieber, bald will ich sei frei. And so on. If I continue like this and you see these squares represent different characters, we will get a line like this. You get the idea, right? And this is how it looks on the screen. This is what my students would put together. And I have a question to you. That's another example. With modern technology, they can use emoji to have pictures of these characters, again, in the order of their appearance, according to that list we are making. Do you notice anything in this visual list? Hi, Mishke.
Hi. Sorry I'm late here. I'm actually still on tour and in Boston, and I didn't think I could make this meeting, but really nice to see you and to hear this amazing stuff. I think I've missed one of the most remarkable sessions we've had. But
you're up to the best part of it. We're
Okay.
up to the sod of the song Reisele. We covered Pshat, Remes, Drash, and now we're about to discover some sod. And if we merit to do that, we will probably find ourselves in Pardes and paradise.
Uh-huh.
So the question, look at this list. Do you notice anything?
Well, it's very well distributed. I mean, it's very evenly, distributed, the characters. They're not just all in one place. They keep coming back and forth.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mark. I would point to my students' attention right here. Look at this point. And again, this is a long list of all characters. And you see this point where you have Dovidel, blue, and Reisele, red, together.
Yeah.
In a smaller list, it would be just Reisele. It would be just Reisele because she's the one who's speaking. And if you look to the left and to the right, and to the left and to the right, and to the left and to the right, what do you guys notice?
Yeah, that's actually what I noticed, is that it focuses on those characters in the middle.
Very good. When you say in the middle, what I would tell you, there is a central symmetry. There is an axis of symmetry. Because if you look right and left, you will see that those squares, those colors, have central symmetry exactly around this point. And what is this point? You will be surprised. This is the point in the story where it culminates. This is where Dovidel needs to listen to the scolding and to say, I'm changing my whole life. Whatever I was doing before, I will do differently. I will do this, and that, so that I will be with you. This is exactly the culmination, the climax of the story. And isn't it surprising that this is the center of symmetry? And this is the axis of the whole narrative? To me, when I first looked at that, I was really shocked. Now I want to bring your attention to this point here. What do you notice about this little tail? It's also Dovid and Reisele, but it does not correspond to anything. It's not symmetrical. You see this green? Do you see my cursor?
Yeah.
So you see the green
It's still in
gessel?
the middle, though.
Yeah, this green gessel, it is symmetrical to the first gessel. So they're symmetrical, but this is not symmetrical with anything, and I'll call it coda. Here I use a musical term. It's at the end of the story. And look what we can do. If you look at this strip, and you take this Dovid and Reisele, and you make a circle, you make a ring out of them, you will see how now everything becomes symmetrical in a ring. And I will show you how we do it with students. You know, hands-on materials. We use markers, we use colors, we use graph paper, we cut them out like this, and we use those little arms of cut paper. Thank you for mentioning Pechersky, Itzek, because this is what they would do in their art. And we glue together those corresponding symmetrical squares with our students. And we also use colors to connect and make those concentric circles with the symmetrical characters, symmetrical squares, same colors. We do it on paper, we do it on phones. Look how it's all symmetrical. Look how it all connects, but not precisely. There are some little discrepancies that I will show you. Now, here you can tell that you have central symmetry, you have concentric circles, you have parallelism, and you have a ring structure. If this reminds you of something, it's because you are very well educated. Usually my audiences don't get these terms, and I don't go deeper with them, but I will with you. So what I do with my beginner audiences, I make a circle like this. Right? So now it's not just aligned with concentric symmetrical circles, it's a ring, it's a loop. And this is the beginning of the story. So you see, steht sich dort ein Gässele, still vertraut Eisele, dort auf dem Bodenstibel wohnt mein Teier Reisele, jeden Abend fahren Heisel, dreh ich sich herum and so on. So this is the beginning, and this is the culmination. This purple is mother. So the mother mentioned, they exchange their, very difficult talk. And the mother is mentioned again when he promises to. Okay, so at the end here, you have this coda, this little tail that seemed to be unnecessary because it did not correspond. It was not symmetrical to anything, but now it is. It's exactly this David and Reisele at the end. It's symmetrical and right across David and Reisele in the culmination. So if I have this strip done with little squares, and I take the part where my culmination is between the two mother squares right here, I can put it together. It would be exactly at the end of the story. That little tail was not there for nothing, that coda. And so my students use the same colors for the same square. So if you see red, blue, and yellow in this diagram, it's the same character that are symmetrical in this loop. And the purple ones show the ones that don't match in color. But the whole point of the text analysis to see these different ones. What is this story right here? What lines are these? And what are they parallel to? What are they symmetrical with in this loop on the other in the other part of the narrative of the story? And you will be surprised how much symbolism and connections you can find. And those vertical black lines, these are the color symmetry that you saw in the initial picture. What do I mean by initial picture? So this is what we saw before, and now I'm going to connect the symmetrical parts. It will look like this. I apologize for my technological challenges. Longer you make the line, wider it becomes. Probably if I spent more hours on this, I could have made them thinner, but I could not. But bear with me and look from the center. So you see how mother makes a concentric circle here, and then the blue Dovidel and red Reisele, you get the idea, right? So I connect them here. I connect it on the half of it, but you can make it the whole circle, concentrical. And this is what it will look like, and this is what my students develop. Now, if you look at this, and this is our center of symmetry. This is the mother, this is Dovidel, this is Reisele, this is Dovidel, this is house, this is Reisele, but oops, see here, you don't have the exact symmetry. And there is another part over here, the symmetry is not exact. And I chose these vivid colors so you can see it nice and bright on the screen. With my students, I always use pastel soft colors like beige and pink. It looks much nicer. But here for you to visualize it, I hope you like neon colors. So why do we have these little discrepancies? They happen only on the long list of characters. Again, if you take a short list of characters, only the acting character, there would be no discrepancies. It would be central symmetry all around. It would be central symmetry all the time. Now, why is it here? Not for nothing. Because if you look carefully, you can see other little epicenters or centers of symmetry. Look at this. Look at this left side. You see this blue in the center? It's Dovidel, and you have Rezele, House, and Gessel around them. So he is the center of this symmetry. Now look at this cluster. Here you have red, it's Rezele, and you have House around it. See why there was a discrepancy in the first picture? Because we needed this house to be symmetrical with this. So now you have a whole cluster of symmetry, concentric circles around Rezele. Now look at this little one. This one is around the yellow square. It's the house. So this is around the house. And this one, I would say this one is around the Gessele. Those two green ones, it's a Gessele with a house in it, right? And it's the biggest one. And the most, look how many symmetrical characters you have around this. So what we have, Dovidel, David Melech Israel, our symbol of the Jewish people, Rezele, our Torah, and house, Bais, you name it, Jewish home, Beis HaMikdash, Beis HaMedrash, Bais, house, and the Gessel, you know, a Yiddish gas, community, Kehila, everything surrounded. And in the center of this entire diagram, of course, is this purple one, this circle, this center of symmetry, that where David and Rezele, he and she, future Hosen Kale, are surrounded by mother, who we just learned is our Shechina, our symbol of God, dwelling in that house that we see. And you know that Eins der Kodesh Baruch Hu was as mezavek zivugim, and they are preparing for the wedding, which is a wedding between David and Rezele in the love story of Pshat, and between Torah and Jewish people in the sod of this, in the drash and sod of my analysis. So it's not for nothing, it's exactly in the center of the song. And again, if you look at this little part, and this is what I do with students, hands-on, with paper or felt, with fabric, you take this little end and you turn it around, and you will have a ring with all this symmetry. But speaking of symmetries, I have another question. What else is repetitive in this text? I mentioned it before, do you remember? Okay. The refrains, there are two refrains, and they're also symmetrical. They also repeat, it's a pattern. We have kum, kum, kum several times, which are mixed with eins, zwei, drei. So if I add this to my initial diagram, look at the top here. This eins, zwei, drei is exactly in the center of symmetry, this eins, zwei, drei. Okay, whereas this eins and so on. There's another eins, zwei, drei here and another one here. If you connect them with circles, with ovals, and you put them on top of that design that I showed you before, it would be additional concentric rings that connect the pattern of the refrains. And kum, kum, kum goes across, kum, 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 and kum, kum, kum. And the last kum, 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 exactly where our David and Rezele at the end of the song. And when you make a ring, this is what I try to show here by this line. When you close the cycle, when you close the circle, this kum, kum, kum becomes here in the beginning, and the cycle or circle ends. So you get something like this. For technical reasons, and I didn't want it to be too crowded, I didn't put the refrain rings on top of this picture, but with my students, I always do. We put in different color, we put paper rings to show where precisely in the line of characters in the list of all those people in the story, those refrains go. And you'll see there is also a significance to that. So when you make it more round, it looks nicer. And this is what it's mentioned. Thank you very much. This structure can be found not only in the song Rezel, of course. It's a very typical text structure of the Tehillim. The Tehillim have exactly the same concentric structure. There is a whole study of biblical poetry based on that. And this is what I tell my students. All I need them to know who wrote Tehillim. David HaMelech, we have David here. And this is the structure that can be found in Tanakh. But most of my students are not familiar with Tehillim. Especially my young students, they are more familiar with Torah stories. So I give them an example what they can which they can relate to. So here is a story of Noah that they learn in their initial Parshayot HaShavua. And you can see the same structure in many parts of the Torah and Ketuvim and Nevi'im. This is a typical Jewish text structure. And isn't it amazing that it can be found in the song Grezele? So if you look at the story of Noach, you can see how all these events are listed here until the culminating part. And again, this is the culmination where God remembers Noah. See, this is a center of symmetry, where all these events now are symmetrical. They go back, you see those letters to show the scheme of their appearance. We get it, right? So to me, it is very amazing. This is the sod of this text that has the same structure as our Holy Scriptures and Tehillim. So now we have this thought about David HaMelech, who wrote the Tehillim, and we have the structure of Tehillim. And like Itzhak said, when I look at the picture like this reminds me of Jewish art of paper cutting, Paperschnitt. These concentric symmetrical designs that are made specifically for the Yom Tov Shavuos. And what's the name for them? The name is Rezel. And this is how I usually finish my teaching of this song. And thank you to Mordechai Gibirtik for creating it to us so we can see Pshat, Dremes, Drash, and Sod on this very good example.
So thank you for a fantastic performance of your thinking. And you went to a lot of trouble to reduce all the graphics and to present it to us so systematically. So we're very grateful to you for that and for all the readers who may come to read this later on. I guess I only one question occurs to me. Does it matter to you or not whether Mordechai Gibirtik would have anything to say about your interpretation? Does it matter?
Yes, of course it matters. Anything Mordechai Gibirtik would say would matter to me. It's a very common question. Do you really think he meant all of that? Maybe he didn't. But my point is, all the psychological associations, all the allusions, all the ideas that come to our minds as creators, as users, or as persons, is because of our environment and our tradition and our audio and visual surroundings. So I would not rule it out that he had something like this in mind, and if he did not, it was subconsciously or subliminal because of the associations that were in his mind. Why did he rhyme shvuli and snuli and not any other word? Why did they put his characters like this? It didn't mean it, but it came naturally just because of this fundamental knowledge that people should possess when they create their songs or when they interpret them.
So you think that culture has an extraordinary organic unity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I can give you like not here and not today. You can take many Yiddish songs and see exactly the same allusions and structures that probably are hidden from many of people who listen to them or perform them, and they are there. Sorry, Meshke.
No, I was going to
Yes.
say exactly the same thing. I don't know what I missed earlier, but um, I was going to ask whether you had done this with other Yiddish songs, and you know, it would be interesting to, really interesting to have a look at, you know, other songs, especially I was going to say more traditional songs where we don't have a known author. In particular, you know, the fact that Gebirtig, of course, was in many ways a literary figure. He wanted to be a lyricist and composer in the Yiddish theater. And yeah, so and now I also wonder to what extent this is part of a larger, this structuralism applies to a larger, at least European literary, balladic song tradition, etc. You know, to what extent is this specifically, you know, reflecting some kind of Jewish cultural genetics, cultural DNA, etc. You know, question mark.
Sure. I think it depends on what songs you take. Some songs are more obvious and some songs are not. If you're talking about the sod part of this analysis, the one that you saw, I can tell you that, for example, songs in the type of Einmol Einmol, you know that structure? Einmol tu banayan, yeah,
Yes.
this is a typical biblical text structure. Okay, when the last line of the previous verse is the beginning of the next verse. Lion, 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 lion. You know what I mean? So
Sure, of course. I mean, what I'm
and
not
that's
sure
considered
about,
a folk song, right?
yes, but I'm not sure that isn't something that's found in many, for example, many European folk song traditions.
Absolutely. Wouldn't you say that the Bible also is a foundation for many European non-Jewish traditions? What I discovered this week when I was preparing this presentation, I Googled this structure in Psalms, and to my surprise, most of the responses were from Christian theological seminaries. I only found one link with the professor from yeshiva in Israel, who was doing it in a Jewish context. My guess is because I was doing the search in English. If I would do this search in Hebrew, most likely I will find better results. So yes, this structure that I showed to you with those, you saw those literally terms that I didn't want to use in this talk that is not meant for, you know, philologists. Yes, it happens in other traditions too, the structure, but this comes more commonly from the Bible, from Tanakh. It's from the Hebrew source. And yes, you can find it probably in other traditions, not to mean that it's not a Jewish tradition as well. In terms of other songs, my question is always why this word is used here and why this thing is mentioned there. And see, Meshke, you give me a challenge to use songs that we don't know authors for, right? So I'll take a challenge. Would you consider the lullaby Amolas Gevena Maise a folk song?
I suppose, but it has a very kind of literary character too. That's my response to that.
Okay. See, for myself and for many people around me whom I teach, we don't learn songs from books where authors are listed. We all learn from the songs from another fellow person. We learn it in a community situation. Most of the songs I learned were from voice, from singing. I never saw them written. I wouldn't know if we know the author. So when we take a song I'm always given the Meise hebt ze honet von a Jiddischen Melech. First question, which Jiddischen Melech? And here you start to unravel the whole thing. What does it mean? Who is this about? And then you talk about all the symbolism of the tree, of the nest, of the branch, and of the bird. And you can apply the whole Pshat, Remez, Drash, and so to that song and decide from whose perspective der Melech hat gestorben, in my Yiddish pronunciation. From whose perspective this Melech is dead. Maybe it's from the perspective of that bird, with the Yiddish Jewish soul, who left her nest on the branch of the tree, Etz Chaim Hi Lemechazikim Ba. And then, in that situation, it seems to her that God is dead. Which Yiddischen Melech? You can pinpoint which one, right? And that's a folk song. If you take, see, the good examples that I have right now, because they are more like developed examples, are of those that we know authors for. But again, having an author doesn't mean that Yiddish song doesn't have all this richness, whether or not they meant to input those secrets into it. Maybe they didn't, but it came out like that. I have a question to you. You know, Itzhak Manger is very well known for his songs based on Tanakh, correct? Let's take one that is not based on Tanakh. Einsam. Keiner weiß nicht, was ich sag. Right? Question. Why is it mentioned Sieben meislich mit a Mois schlofen auf dem Dell? What do the mice have to do with the content of the song? If you start thinking about it, I'll give you a whole drush and a whole sod about that. Right? It's not there for nothing. Second question. Why does it say that the tavern has hoba fessele mit Wein, a fessele mit gold? Does it mean it has two fesselech, or it's the same one, which is a wine, which is like gold? And why? And what does it mean? There is a whole story about that too. And you can take and you can develop this as well. Before the pandemic, when we had this, last time I saw you all together in the same room, is when we had a Yiddish Song Roundtable at Yiddish New York. And when I was talking about Zog der Rebbe Reb Motinyo, Oy Tzadikim Gehen Bom. It's, we know the author, it's by Aaron Zeitlin. But the fact that the majority of people, and if you see it online, there are some interpretations published for that song online. Nobody mentions and nobody notices what you can really notice if you know the Mekorim, if you know the Jewish tradition. And I think personally, it's very, very important to let people know that there is something behind the songs and you can read in between lines. This I would love for all our people who are interested in Yiddish songs, not only to see the pshat behind them, but to see their remez, which is easy to find, and to be zoichet to find some drash and sod, so they know that many songs that were created before by known authors, by unknown authors, have very deep layers and connections that we can make with ourselves, with our world, and with other texts.
Do we have other comments? Zeb, do you want to say anything?
Actually, think about it here, but you know, it's late here in Budapest, so I can't really stay longer. But I hope another time we can develop this further. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Larisa.
Is Ethel still there?
Schönen Dank. Schönen Dank.
Yeah,
Bye
no,
bye.
right. Yeah, you always so talk. Right.
Is Ethel still here? I don't see her.
Kusunam.
Yeah,
Okay. Bye, Zeph. Oh, there's Ethel.
Ethel, I'm
Muted, Ethel.
in Itzik, especially. I'm interested in giving your knowledge. Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much, Larissa. It was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Do you have anything to chip in about the project?
Well, I mean, some of what we really delve into are the songs that are primarily women's traditions. It would be very interesting to look at text analysis for that. The other comment is that in the folk songs, the words are not as specific because they have never been written down, which means as the song travels, different words come in, they get all, mixed in different combinations. So it would be hard to do, this is the text kind of analysis, but which is another interesting aspect actually of oral tradition. But thank you so much. Fascinating. I love all the graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Incredible.
and I totally agree with you. With folk songs, it's always, to me, it's always both the text and sometimes the melody also. When we transmit it, we don't always remember it exactly, and we put words that work for us and notes that work for us. But to me, it's always interesting, which words do people put in?
Oh, for sure.
What
Absolutely.
comes to your mind? What do you think is logical to put there? And of course, I totally agree with you that there is no written in stone text to many folk songs.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a question, Larissa. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. Your diagrams are very much to my heart because that's the kind of analysis I love to do as well. My comment and question is your analysis of the text feels like it reaches in one direction, which is back into the background of the text, which is fascinating, and I think probably very interesting for your audience. For the people that you teach this. My question is, how do you relate the song texts to the lives of the people who you're teaching? Because I know that when I teach a song, people are curious about what the background of it is, and sometimes going very deeply into the background as you have. But they're also we don't really get to encourage a transmission of the song unless people can also relate it to their own lives. So, for example, singing it as singing a lullaby to your own kids or to someone you're putting to sleep, or you are generally, if the song is going to mean something in your life, you're not only thinking about, and you don't have in mind and your intention, the biblical association or the traditional association, but the intention that you put into it as you're singing it to a living person with a future more than a past. So I'm curious, when you teach these songs, if if the kids talk about how the text relates to their own experience.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Josh, all the time. Because as we said before, that's my goal, for them to take those songs and make them their own. And you cannot make them your own if you don't relate to them. I'll give you a little example from my most recent experience. You know that now I work at a public school. So for several years before the pandemic, I had a Yiddish singing club in my public school where none of my students were Jewish. And we were preparing with the year-long course in Jewish musical folklore, I called it Yiddish musical folklore, to perform at the end of the school year with Itzhak Perlman and Folksong Yiddish theater. So I wanted to bring my students to sing in Yiddish at such a prestigious stage with a good knowledge and feeling for the traditional Jewish melody. I didn't want them just, to train them and bring them to sing. So we spent the whole year. And of course, I started teaching them with Nigunim because, they don't know the language. In my school, they learn Chinese, Japanese, and Korean as foreign languages. They have enough. So we started with Nigunim, and I taught them Ich der Mond sich auf der Freitag auf der Nacht. That Nigun, very simple, one of the first one. Yaradai dam dam. So, and I always ask students, what comes to your mind when you sing this song? And I explain the content in English, all the verses. We spoke about, you probably know all the verses, right? So we spoke about how do you spend your weekend with your family? What do your parents do on the weekend? Do they ask you about your school? Like they ask, and we had very long conversations. So we went through the whole text of the Jewish song about Shabbat because it's a very narrative, epic song, right? So there are many examples that they spoke a lot about their own family experiences. And I asked them, do you sing around your family table? Does your mother sit with a book by a window? Does your grandmother tell you stories? I didn't make it straight, explicit like this. I always made it open-end questions. Like, what does your grandmother do? Or like, what can you tell us about books in your house? So it's more open-ended. So one girl volunteered to share the following. She's a Muslim girl, and she says, oh, this song reminds me so much how we celebrate Ramadan, when we sit all together around the table with my aunts and uncles and all the cousins, and we eat and we sing songs, and we have all those melodies that are so catchy that everybody can join in. And this is exactly how my family celebrates Ramadan. And I felt it was a wonderful comment.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Larisa. That was the piece missing for me, and thank you for supplying it.
And certainly with my Jewish audiences, we also have many experiences like this. And yes, we always, we're supposed to, as teachers, as educators, to make personal connections. So we always bring up stories and anecdotes, again, exactly like my grandmother was teaching me. She didn't know she was teaching me like explicitly. She would sing all day long and stop and tell me, when I was a child, we did this and that. In my shtetl, we did this and that. So she made those connections. She would tell me, oh, Jewish girls like you don't do that, right? So she made that connection not only with herself, but with me as your granddaughter. So yeah, we always do that. And I think it's extremely important. Otherwise, why?
What ages are the students that you teach?
From 0 to 120.
In the public school?
Oh, in the public school? I thought you meant, Jewish school. No, I teach mostly high school. I teach high school, and in my, I used to teach middle school and high school because I teach all core subjects. So now I'm more into high school, but my Yiddish singing club had half and half, middle school and high school students. It was a wonderful experience. I remember I brought my students to the dress rehearsal with Zalman Mlotek at Folksong, and there were other schools there, Jewish schools. We were the only public school. So she starts speaking to the children, and it goes, what comes to your mind when you hear a melody without words? And one of my students, a high school girl, African-American girl, she raises her hand. And she says, Anigan.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Very beautiful, very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, you're doing some very important work using the
Lovely.
The Yiddish song as a way to go out in all kinds of very fruitful and helpful directions. Yeah.
Shkoyach.
Yeah, well,
Thank you so
thank you so
much.
much for taking so much time to prepare and
you.
present this. And
Thank
yeah,
you so much.
and I'll send you the recording and you can decide how you want to work with the recording. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you. And I will always want to hear from you. I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your ideas. And I love Yiddish songs so much. I want to do anything possible with them so more people know them, like them, sing them, and don't hesitate. Don't be shy to sing them for any occasions. So guys, thank you.
Thank you, Larisa.
Thank
Danke.
Thank you.
Danke und Пока.
Besten Dank.